So just had a little discussion here of technophobia, and I have to say that there are plenty of examples you can cite from the left and the right. The right-wing examples are obvious. On the left, we have opposition to nuclear power, genetically modified foods, and so forth. And actually, though, I do not think that the relevant categories for discussion are left and right. Left and right refers to the positions of people in the French National Assembly of 1789, and political alignments have become somewhat scrambled since then. But I do want to talk about two fundamentally different political points of view. Define them left or right as you will. Who here has ever heard of Robert Ingersoll? Only a few. Okay. Robert Ingersoll was one of the founders of the Republican Party. He's one of the original Lincoln Republicans. He served as a colonel in the Union Army in the Civil War. He fought at Shiloh. And then afterwards, he became an orator and was one of the most important Lincoln Republican orators in the United States from the end of the Civil War till about the turn of the 20th century. And in 1876, he gave a speech, which is an extraordinary speech, which, if you can, look it up, read it in full. It's a long speech. It's an incredible speech. He gave it to a group of Civil War veterans in Indianapolis. So it's sometimes called the Indianapolis speech. It's sometimes called the Vision of War speech, in which he was rallying them for the Republican cause, because this was during the 1876 election. But in the course of the speech, he was explaining to them what they had fought for. What was this thing all about? What did you go through all this for? And in part of this speech, he's explaining why we don't need slavery, why we doesn't need to be any slaves. Well, every society in the past that had slaves or serfs or peasants or something like that, why we don't need that. Because, you know, we freed the slaves, but don't we fundamentally need slaves in one form or another? And he says the following. He says, we, the Republican Party as he saw it, okay, believe that free labor, that free thought has enslaved the forces of nature and made them work for man. We made the old attraction of gravitation work for us. We make the lightning do our errands. We make steam hammer and fashion what we need. The wand of progress touches the auction block, the slave pen, the whipping post, and we see homes and firesides and schoolhouses and books, and where all was wanton crime and cruelty and fear, we see the faces of the free. Okay? And it goes on. It's an incredible speech on the relationship of free thought, liberty, technological progress, the uplifting of the human condition, the open future. This is what America is all about. Okay, and this is what we fought to do, and this is what we're going to keep doing. Human liberation. And he's a remarkable guy, actually, and there's a lot that could be said about him, but I don't want to get too far afield. But let me see this. All right. Now, that's one point of view. That's the point of view of the party of Lincoln, which ceased to exist 2 months ago. But the there it is. Now I'm going to read you another statement, and this is by someone who everyone here has heard of. Okay? The law of existence prescribes uninterrupted killing so that the better may live. It's Hitler. Okay, September 1941, he made that statement. At the same time, he issued the order to exterminate the population of the city of Leningrad, a city of 3 million people, which they did not succeed in doing because the city held against the Germans, but that's what they intended to do. Now, the laws of existence prescribes uninterrupted killing so that the better may live. Hitler believed there was only so much to go around. Okay, so there it is. He was aware that there were these people saying that, no, we can expand the total amount that's available for everyone through scientific progress. He believed that this idea was a Jewish plot to convince people that war was unnecessary, okay? To convince people, well, in particular, genocidal war was unnecessary, that Germany didn't need to steal living space from other countries and exterminate their people. This is a necessity, and these people are trying to undermine the rationale for my program. And by the way, there's a very interesting book by a historian named Timothy Snyder called Bloodlands that goes into this in some depth. But those are two diametrically countered points of view. Because if you believe that human beings create resources, that free thought, the more people there are, the more free thinkers there are, and the more inventions there are going to be, and the more rapid the rate of progress, and the more rapid the rate of expansion of resources, which, by the way, is what exactly we have seen. As the world's population has gone up, the standard of living has gone up and not down, and it has gone up exponentially. Okay, when Malthus wrote his book, arguing the contrary position, in 1800, there were 1 billion people on Earth. The average per capita income in today's money was $180 per year, 50 cents a day. That is the world described in the novels of Charles Dickens and Victor Hugo, where people are starving to death in the cities of London and Paris, the capitals of the two most advanced countries in the world at the time. Okay. Today, there are 7 billion people. The average per capita income worldwide is $9,000, which is to say 50 times as great. So the population has gone up 7 times. The standard of living has gone up 50 times, which is to say 7 squared. And the total product has gone up 350 times, which is 7 cubed. So Malthus could not have been more wrong, more counterfactual. Okay. And if he had been listened to, think of what a disaster it would be. Let's say that they had zero population growth in the 1800s, so that the world had had half as many people in it by the latter half of the century than there actually were. Then you can give up either Thomas Edison or Louis Pasteur. Take your pick. Okay? In other words, we're not hurting for the extra coal that they used. We're greatly benefiting by the innovations that they made. Okay? Now, where am I going with this? Why is this relevant? Today, we face a kind of a crisis, and you're seeing it. Okay, for instance, if you take both political parties currently in the United States, both have embraced, to a more moderate degree to be sure, but some of the fundamental axioms that Hitler enunciated there. There's only so much to go around. The Democrats say there's only so much natural resources to go around. There's only so much permissibility of carbon emissions to go around. Human activity must be constrained. Mr. Trump says there's only so many jobs to go around, as if there were 150 million jobs here when the Pilgrims landed and now they're all used up. Okay. Where did these opportunities come from? Okay, there were no jobs here when the Pilgrims landed. The Indians weren't hiring. And this has all been created. Now, Hitler was very explicit about this. He did not want people to believe in scientific progress because it would undermine the idea that he had of the need for world conquest, of national social Darwinism, if you will, of the need for certain races to exterminate other races, and for a state that would champion that imperative, to be winners. Now, and in fact, his fear on that score is justified because the idea of scientific progress does undermine that ideology, which is why we need scientific progress. Because that ideology, and by the way, that ideology was around in somewhat less obvious form already in Germany in the First World War. In other words, that ideology that there's only so much to go around and we got to fight for it is the source of the catastrophes of the 20th century. And it could easily be the source of the catastrophes of the 21st century. Okay? You know, I was in Moscow in 2013 at a conference and explaining some of my ideas about world development. And then after me, this professor from Moscow State University got up and he opposed my position, and he said, no, the world does have limited resources, and America is using them up. America is 4% of the world's population, using up 25% of the world's oil, and not only that, we're using up the world's oxygen supply. Those are fighting words. I mean, when someone says you're using up the world's oxygen supply, they're suggesting that something should be done about you. Now, I got up, I was pretty mad. I said, what are you talking about? We're not impoverishing the world. Where do you think this came from? And I pointed to the laptop computer. Where do you think that came from? And the microphone, and that came from. And the lights on the ceiling, and that came from. America is not impoverishing Russia. America has made Russia much richer by creating all these inventions. We're 4% of the world's population. We've created in the 20th century 50% of the world's inventions. But still, if you believe there isn't enough to go around, then America is the enemy of all other nations. On the other hand, I have to tell you that I know for a fact that there are people sitting in this city right now, very serious people, and people with a lot of power, who are looking at, well, in particular, the rise of China, and saying, can't let this happen. If the sons and daughters of these Chinese peasants go to university, and then after that, they've got incomes, they're going to be buying automobiles and using oil, and there won't be enough to go around. Okay, we got to keep them down. We got to do something about them. And there are people in China who know that they're thinking that and want to do something about them. And so where does this world go? Now, the fact of the matter is those folks over there in Crystal City are wrong. Okay, they are wrong. Okay, because if the sons and daughters of Chinese peasants become scientists and engineers, they will start contributing to global scientific and technological progress at something like a comparable rate to Americans and Europeans, and the rate of global progress will go up. We will benefit ordinarily. You know, I'm an inventor, I'm an American prototype. I'm the American inventor. I've got a bunch of patents. I'm really proud of the role of America as a house of invention. But frankly, we'd all be a lot better off if the rest of the world were doing their share. Okay, we really would. So we'd be better off if they were uplifted, just as they are much better off because we exist. But if the contrary belief is there, we're headed for world war. We are. Okay? I mean, Donald Trump wants to start a trade war with China. Does. 45% tariff. You know, keep their goods out of here. Stop their industry from growing. Well, they'll think of things to do about that. So there it is. There's two fundamental ways of looking at the world. Okay, is it that there's a bunch of natural resources out there that pre-exist any human existence, and then people are just kind of consuming them? Or is it that people create resources, and people are the creators of resources? Creators, okay? We don't find them, we create them. That is what I believe, okay? Land, this thing that everybody wants, was not a resource until people invented agriculture. It wasn't. It was just this stuff you had to travel over and to chase animals. Okay? And the value of land as a resource, and therefore, in a sense, the total useful land, has been multiplied tens and even hundreds of times over since the invention of agriculture by the technological advance of agriculture. Okay? Oil was not a resource until we developed oil drilling, refining, and machines that could run on it. Okay? So people say, we're using up the world's oil. No one would be using any oil if we hadn't invented oil drilling. Okay? Nuclear power, uranium was not a resource till we developed nuclear power. Deuterium is not a resource now because we don't yet have fusion power. Someday we will because people invent it and that will expand it. Now, so the issue is that, and it's a critical issue, and we're seeing this here and they're seeing it in Europe too with the rise of various movements on both the left and the right that believe in this limited resource thesis in one version or another. Whether it's the Greens or the ultra-right, they're two different versions of the same thesis. Okay? And this is bad. It's really bad. Now, the problem is despite the manifest counterfactual nature of this thesis, as I've just reported, comparing Malthus's prediction to the actual result, it appears to be true. It seems there's only so much to go around. There's only so many jobs. I mean, there's only so much natural resources, okay? And therefore, it has a certain credibility. Now, I don't think that we need to go to Mars in order to recover materials for use on Earth, or at least not anytime soon. I believe that the materials of the Earth, if human ingenuity is allowed to continue to exercise itself and grow, can support human civilization on an increasingly high level of existence for quite a time. But the thing that threatens us is not there being too many people on Earth, but that there being too many people who believe that there are too many people on Earth. That, okay, in other words, you're not threatened by too many people, you're threatened by people who think there are too many people, okay, and that you're one of them. But the human expansion into space is tangible proof that this thesis is wrong. It's tangible proof. That is, if we can access other worlds, okay, it makes it clear the Earth is not the only world. There is a planet B and C and Z and double Z and triple Z. Okay, there really is, and so that's why we have to make this happen. People say, you know, why is this so important when there's all this trouble in the world? It's precisely because there's this trouble in this world that this is so important, is that by going to Mars, okay, we make it clear that the source of everything, including entire worlds, is human creativity, okay? And that we're not running out of stuff. We are expanding the availability of stuff exponentially, okay? And that we're not living at the end of history, we're living at the beginning of history. Think about that. We're living at the beginning of history. If we go to Mars in our time, we establish that little Plymouth Rock settlement on Mars in our time. 200 years from now, there'll be new branches of human civilization on Mars. And there will be human expeditions heading out towards the stars because establishment of humanity as interplanetary civilization will create the need for technological developments, ever rapid space transportation systems, for example. You know, the first expeditions can go to Mars, it'll take 6 months, we can do it with chemical propulsion. But their grandchildren are not going to believe the tales of their immigrant grandparents of traveling to Mars in 6 months in a cramped little spaceship, and you know, because by then it'll be routine and they'll do the transit in 3 weeks in a fusion-powered spacecraft. But those same kind of more advanced craft that make traveling to Mars almost as routine as traveling to Europe is now, will make it possible for more adventurous souls to go much, much further out. Okay? And so we'll go. And as a result, 500 years from now, there will be new branches of human civilization, not just all over this solar system, but in thousands of solar systems in this reach of the galaxy. Thousands of new cultures, new civilizations with new languages, literatures, dialects, okay, many contributions to technology and invention, certainly many tales of epic deeds that will be used to inspire people to go further, thousands of inhabited planets filled with people coming up with inventions which will be transmitted to each other, all accelerating the advance of each. Okay? And when they look back on this time, okay, well, first of all, the idea that people would need to fight world wars to try to divide up the spoils of the fossil fuel supply of one planet will seem categorically absurd. Okay? Just like today, the idea that, in the Middle Ages, wars were fought over salt supplies. They were? Okay. Because you needed salt to preserve food. Okay. And have refrigeration. The Roman soldiers were paid in salt, by the way. That's why the expression, not worth your salt, comes from. That's where the word salary comes from, actually. But putting that aside, okay, it will seem absurd. And also, looking back at this time, what people are doing today will anyone then consider important? Okay, most of you in this room are Americans. If I asked any American what happened in the year 1492, they would tell you Columbus sailed. Okay? And so he did. And he made us possible. But actually, there were a lot of other things happened in 1492. In 1492, the Borgias took over the papacy. Lorenzo de' Medici died in 1492. England and France signed a peace treaty in 1492. If they had had the equivalent of the Washington Post in 1492 over in Europe, those would have been the headline events, not this Italian weaver's son sailing off in the ocean in a direction of nowhere. Okay? Really. But today, only history buffs, I'm a history buff, okay, know about that kind of stuff. I mean, really. So 500 years from now, nobody's going to care who won in Syria. No one's even going to have heard of Syria. Probably. Okay. Doubt it. Apollo program was launched in part to show up the Soviet Union and astound the world with what free people could do. Okay? But here we are, only less than 50 years after the moon landing, the Soviet Union no longer exists. Okay? A couple of hundred years from now, only history buffs will know what the Soviet Union was. Okay? Really? It's like the Zollverein or something. Who here knows what the Zollverein was? Okay, one person. There you go. 2. Wow. Okay. It was a confederation that led to German unity. But there you go. Transitory thing. Anyway, the thing is, this is what will matter. Okay. Just like today, no one really cares that the Borgias took over the papacy, the world's most powerful institution, in 1492. So this is what is important. This is what the future will recognize as important. And this is what we need to do to make sure that there is that glorious future, to prevent the fall of night. Okay? This idea that we're in the closing circle, there's only so much to go around, we've got to get ready to have it out. This is the most dangerous idea that there is. It's a really dangerous idea. There is no natural phenomena more dangerous than this. There is no objective concern over some of these various issues that are named, oil supplies, carbon emissions. None of this compares to the potentially fatal consequences of setting people against each other with this idea. And so we gotta do what we can. We gotta show people the sky. I don't mean just the blue sky. I mean the real sky, beyond the sky. I guess it was Oscar Wilde who said, "We all live in the gutter, but some of us can see the stars." Okay, there it is. So this is our mission, okay, and the political crises that we face right now in Europe is quite visible here, are indicative of how serious this problem is. But if we do have this, I mean, look, if human beings, just think about this. If we do a 2-person Mars flyby in 2024, what does that mean? Human beings flying by Mars, okay, seeing it up close, being out there, disproving completely this idea that the radiation is this, dragon that's waiting to eat us in space, and or that there are crystal spheres surrounding the Earth that we can't penetrate through, that there's a wall that they're keeping us in with, okay? It just blows it all away. It blows the roof off the house. It blows away the wall. It breaks the crystal spheres. It liberates humanity. And all of a sudden, we realize that the Earth is a world, but it's not the only world. That there's an infinite number of worlds that are waiting for us if we choose to exercise the divine spark of reason that we have in us, the thing that can lift us up, the thing that lifts us above the beasts from which we evolved, that we don't have to tear each other to pieces, okay? That we can make enough for all. So that's what this is about. We are not people who are obsessed with some tangential hobby that has no relationship to the important concerns of humanity. What we have before us is a mission to do something that can show the way to a better future. Thank you. So, as I said, we haven't determined exactly where we're going to be next year, but I believe it will be in the West. I'm hoping for Los Angeles. And when school's in session, maybe Columbus Day weekend, who knows? We got to find out what is there that we could do. But hope I see you all next year. Bye.